Vacation betrayal. I paid their bills. They spent my money on paradise without me. My name is Lucas, and until recently, I wore the good son badge with pride. At 27, I always believed in family, in stepping up when they stumbled. Rent to high, I covered it. Car in the shop, my card paid the bill. Siblings needing tuition help, I was the first to offer, never uttering a complaint because, well, family comes first, right? But a devastating truth unraveled last week, shattering my perception of my parents and leaving me questioning everything. It began a year ago, a slow-motion disaster as my parents spiraled into financial turmoil. Bills stacked up like unpaid debts, the mortgage loomed, and the threat of utilities being cut off hung heavy in the air. Dad had a decent job, but Mom hadn't worked in years, and their financial decisions were questionable. Every other month, it was an emergency: a busted water heater, an unexpected medical bill, a new crisis emerging when the old one was scarcely paid, and each time, their eyes found mine. At first, I didn't hesitate. I make a comfortable living in technology, and the idea of watching my parents drown in stress was unbearable. Why wouldn't I ease their burden? But gradually, assistance morphed into expectation, the pleas evolving from a humble request to demands. Lucas, our rent is due next week. Just transfer the money to Mom's account like last time. No discussion, no gratitude, just an assumption that I was their personal ATM. Initially, I brushed it off. Family, right? If my financial contribution kept them from losing their home, so be it. But a simmering resentment began to churn inside me. The entitlement, the complete lack of appreciation. My younger siblings, both in their early 20s and still leeching off my parents, contributed nothing. My brother was always out partying with his buddies, flaunting new clothes, while my sister indulged in an expensive skincare routine that probably cost more than our rent. Yet, I was the one single-handedly keeping the roof over their heads. Eventually, I tried to establish boundaries, which were met with resistance, to put it mildly. One month, I informed my father that I could only cover half the rent. His reaction wasn't disappointment, but a fiery anger. He launched into a tirade about how I owed them for raising me, how parents sacrificed everything for their children, and now that I had money, it was my turn to repay them. Those words stung, but like a fool, I succumbed and sent the full amount. Then, last week, the bomb dropped. I was casually texting my sister when she casually mentioned the resort. When I pressed her about what she meant, she clammed up, refusing to answer. The odd response made me call my mother, but she didn't answer. My father's line led straight to voicemail. Ditto for my brother. Finally, I texted my sister. What are you talking about? Where's everybody? That's when she sent the photo. There they were, my parents, brother, and sister sprawled beside a crystal-clear pool at a luxurious resort, the kind plastered in glossy travel magazines, complete with pristine beaches and exclusive cabanas. Drinks in hand, sunglasses perched on their faces, smiles plastered across their faces. I stared at the screen, numb with a cocktail of emotions I couldn't quite name: betrayal, stupidity, fury. I scrolled back through my messages with my mother. Just 3 days earlier, she'd lamented their financial struggles, painting a bleak picture of impending doom. And yet, here they were, living it up on vacation, without me. After several hours, I managed to call my mother again. She answered, sounding annoyed, as if I were interrupting something important. Lucas, I can't talk right now. We're having dinner. Laughter echoed in the background. Keeping my voice steady, I asked, where are you? Silence. What do you mean? She replied cautiously. I mean, where are you? Because from what I can gather, you're not at home struggling to pay your bills. You're at a resort, which I assume you paid for with the money I sent you. A long pause. Then, a sigh, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. Lucas, we needed this trip. We've been so stressed. You don't understand what it's like to keep this family together. I almost laughed. Holding it together, I'm holding it together. I pay your rent, I pay your bills, and you didn't think I'd find out. Her tone shifted quickly. Don't be dramatic, Lucas. It was just a little trip, a brief getaway. I bit back a retort that this brief getaway was at an all-inclusive resort when she claimed they couldn't afford rent. Then, she uttered the words that changed everything. You would have ruined the mood. I gripped my phone so tightly my fingers ached. Excuse me, I managed to whisper quietly. You've been so negative lately, always complaining about money. We didn't want to deal with that energy. We needed this to relax. Speechless, I could barely believe the words she was saying. Then, as if to soften the blow, she added, look, I'll make it up to you, okay, maybe next year we'll bring you along. But this trip, this one was just for us. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Then, I hung up, and I began to plan. If they thought they could exploit me indefinitely, they were sorely mistaken. I ignored the flurry of texts that followed that night, the half-hearted "don't be mad," the guilt-inducing "after everything we've done for you." I just stared at the ceiling, replaying every instance I'd bailed them out, covered in overdraft, resolved a last-minute emergency. Every time, I told myself, it's just money. They're family, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, and they had none for me. The next morning, I awoke to over a dozen missed calls from both my parents. The texts from my father were angrier, accusing me of overreacting and ordering me to grow up. My mothers were softer, attempting to smooth things over. Neither offered an apology. I leisurely made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and scrolled through their messages, treating them as if they were from strangers. In that moment, something snapped within me. I was done. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't seek explanations. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they weren't sorry. The only thing left to do was ensure they never took advantage of me again. Step 1 was simple. I cut them off. No dramatic confrontation, no screaming match. I simply logged into my banking app and canceled the automatic transfer I'd set up to send them money every month. Then, I blocked their numbers, not forever, but long enough for them to feel the consequences. I knew exactly how this would play out. Rent was due in a week. They'd blown my money on their lavish getaway, leaving them with nothing to cover their legitimate expenses. Sure enough, 3 days later, my mother's number, though blocked but visible in my call logs, blew up my phone. By the end of the week, she began leaving panicked voicemails. "Lucas, please, we need to talk. We might lose our house. You can't do this to your family. Please, honey, call me back. We didn't mean to hurt you." Then my father's messages berated. "You're being childish. You're punishing us for nothing. Pick up the phone, Lucas." I ignored them all. Next came the siblings. My sister texted first. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. Can we just talk?" Then my brother. "Dude, you're taking this way too far, too far." I nearly laughed. They weren't concerned about me, weren't sorry for their actions. They were simply panicking because they needed money, and I had no intention of providing it this time. A few more days passed. Then, I received an email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "We need to talk." I almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of me. What I read ignited a fresh wave of fury. The email began innocently enough, with a phony plea for reconciliation. "We love you, Lucas. We're sorry you feel this way. Let's talk about it and work it out as a family." But then, the tone shifted, revealing the ugly truth. "We didn't want to tell you this, but we're in a very dire situation. The rent is due, and we don't have enough to pay it. We never imagined you'd abandon us like this." Abandon. "You are aware that we rely on you not appreciating me, not thanking me for everything I'd done, just a straight-up expectation that I would provide for them." The following paragraph twisted my stomach with rage. "Your brother and sister are worried about you. They say you've changed, that you're acting selfishly. Honestly, we're starting to agree. You've been distant ever since you moved out. This isn't who you are, Lucas. We raised you better than this." I slammed my laptop shut. That was it. The final nail in the coffin. They weren't sorry. They didn't even acknowledge their actions. Instead, they were trying to guilt-trip me into bailing them out again. I paced my apartment, fists clenched, my emotions bubbling over. It wasn't just the entitlement, it was the sheer audacity. I'd given them everything, paid their bills, covered their debts, and when they had extra money, they didn't use it to alleviate their problems. They didn't save it. They went on vacation without me, because apparently I was the problem. I'd have ruined the mood. But now that their little fantasy trip was over and reality was staring them in the face, suddenly, I was indispensable. I took a deep breath, my thoughts racing. I could ignore the email, block them, and move on with my life. But something inside me craved more than just silence. I wanted them to feel the consequences of their actions. I sat back down, cracked my knuckles, and began to type. "Mom, I've read your email and thought about what you said. You're right, I've changed. I'm finally seeing things clearly. You didn't rely on me. You used me. And not only did you use me, but you treated me with utter disrespect. You took my money, accepted my kindness, and then intentionally excluded me when it suited you. Now you're broke, you're scared, and suddenly you adore me again. Spare me. I don't owe you anything. I am not your personal ATM, and I'm done being manipulated. Maybe next time you go on a luxury trip, you should plan for what happens when you return home. Best of luck figuring things out." I lingered over the send button, a grim satisfaction spreading on my face. Then, I clicked send. 30 minutes later, my sister texted, "What did you say to Mom?" "She's crying." Then my brother, "Dude, you went too far." And eventually, my father, who had never asked me for anything before, left a voicemail. His voice trembled with barely veiled rage. "Listen to me, Lucas. If you don't fix this, there will be consequences." I played the message twice. Consequences. I almost laughed. They still believed they had influence over me, that they could scare me back into submission. That was their final mistake, because now, I wasn't just walking away. I was about to make sure they never had a hold on me again. I didn't respond to my father's voicemail. Instead, I continued my day as if nothing had happened, but deep down, I knew it wasn't over. My parents weren't the type to let go. They could not bear the thought of losing control over me. So I wasn't surprised to hear a loud, aggressive knock on my apartment door the next evening. I took my time walking over, peering through the peephole. Sure enough, there they were. My father stood stiffly, his jaw clenched as if he were barely able to contain his fury. My mother, on the other hand, had her arms crossed and her face set in an expression of forced disappointment, as if I had somehow wronged them. I considered ignoring them, letting them stew in their frustration, But no, I wanted to see this through. I unlocked and opened the door, leaning casually against the frame. "What do you want?" I asked simply. My mother's expression immediately softened into something more sorrowful. "Lucas, sweetheart, please, let's just talk." "No," I replied, cutting her off. "Say whatever you came here to say, then leave." That's when my father stepped forward, his face flushed with barely restrained anger. "You think you're tough now, right? Ignoring our calls, sending us that filthy email. After everything we've done for you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Have you done everything for me? Do you mean raising me, feeding me as a child, doing the bare minimum that every parent is expected to do?" My mother let out a theatrical gasp, as if I'd slapped her. "How can you be so ungrateful?" I nearly laughed. "Ungrateful?" I said sarcastically. "I paid your rent for an entire year. I stocked food in your refrigerator. I ensured you didn't end up on the streets. And when you finally had extra money, you went on vacation without me. Now you're back because you need me to clean up your mess." Neither of them spoke, too ashamed to even look at me. That's when I stepped aside and gestured towards my apartment. "Come in," I said. They exchanged a quick glance and hesitantly walked inside, as if they expected me to start yelling. I didn't. I closed the door, walked over to my counter, and grabbed a folder. Then I turned and placed it directly in front of them on the coffee table. "What is this?" my father asked cautiously. "Bank statements," I explained. "Every payment I've made for you, every dollar I've sent. Just so we're clear on exactly how much I've done for you." My father barely glanced at it before scoffing. "Oh, so you're keeping score?" "Yes," I replied bluntly. "Because I need you to understand this. I owe you nothing. And you're not entitled to my money." My mother tried again, her voice quiet and pleading. "Lucas, please. We have nowhere else to go." I felt a fleeting pang of pity. But then I remembered her words. "You would have ruined the mood." I took a slow breath and met her gaze. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you made it clear that I wasn't part of this family anymore." My father lost his composure. "You selfish little brat," he snarled. "You sit here in your comfortable apartment, with your steady job, while your family is struggling, and you just cut us off." "Yeah," I replied simply. My mother covered her mouth as if she was about to cry. My father just shook his head, his entire body trembling with barely suppressed anger. Then, out of nowhere, he lunged forward and swept the folder off the table. The papers scattered across the floor. I didn't move, didn't even flinch. He wanted a reaction, but I wasn't about to give him one. Instead, I returned his gaze with a calm, steady expression. "Are you finished?" I asked. My father gave a bitter laugh. "You're going to regret this," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Mark my words, you will regret this." I tilted my head. "Are you threatening me?" He didn't deny it. I stepped forward, my voice icy. "Get out." My mother's face crumpled. "Lucas, please." For the first time in my life, my father appeared hesitant. He grabbed my mother's arm and dragged her towards the door. "You better hope you never need us for anything," he sneered over his shoulder. I just smiled. I never did. And now, I never will. I opened the door for them. They hesitated, as if they were afraid I'd shatter, as if I might change my mind. But I just stood there, silent, waiting. They finally walked out. I shut the door behind them, locked it, and exhaled slowly. I should have felt relieved, but something told me it wasn't over. Not yet. I didn't hear from them for several days. I figured they'd gotten the message. My parents were used to getting their way, but they weren't stupid. They knew they'd pushed me too far this time. I was wrong. It all started with a single, unexpected text from my sister. The message arrived while I was sitting on my couch browsing some random content on my phone. "Hey, can we talk?" I rolled my eyes. When it came to our parents, my sister was never a voice of reason. She was always the one to brush things off and say, "Oh, they're just stressed," or "they didn't mean it like that." But deep down, I knew she wouldn't let this go, either. I decided to humor her, for now. "About what?" A few minutes later, her response came. "About Mom and Dad. They're really upset, Lucas. Can we just talk about it, please?" I rubbed my eyes and tossed my phone onto the coffee table. Just thinking about them made me angry. However, for some reason, I found myself typing back, perhaps fueled by curiosity, perhaps because some twisted part of me still craved closure, or perhaps simply because of the sheer insanity of the situation. What did they want now? She didn't hesitate. "They've been calling me all day. Dad is on the warpath. He said you humiliated them, that you've crossed a line. Mom's been crying nonstop. They're really sorry, Lucas." I laughed bitterly. "I'm sure they are," I responded. "They're sorry because I didn't do what they expected me to do." A few seconds of silence passed. Then, she messaged again. "They're just terrified. They don't know what they'll do without you. They said they've been thinking about everything. Can't you forgive them just once?" "Forgive them," I typed, nearly furious. "You have got to be kidding me. I've been paying their rent for a full year. Taking care of their bills like their personal bank. They didn't even consider including me on their little family vacation. Now that they're in a mess, I'm supposed to swoop in and save them again. No. I'm done, Jamie." The response was immediate. "Please," they apologized. "Lucas. They didn't mean to hurt you. Mom said she was wrong. I know you don't believe it, but she really feels awful. I took a deep breath and ran my fingers through my hair. Part of me wanted to confront her for defending them, but another part of me just wanted the whole thing to be over. It wasn't worth the energy anymore. I don't care what they say anymore, I replied. I'm done. They can figure it out on their own. I've been there for them more than anyone else, and I'm not doing it anymore. I stared at my phone screen for a while, feeling the anger rise again, but this time, I was more in control. The frustration, the disappointment, it was all settling in my stomach like a cold rock. Jamie didn't text back for a long time. I assumed that was it. Then came the call. It was from my mother. I let it ring out. I wasn't interested in what she had to say. A few minutes later, she called again. I responded quickly to get it out of the way. I didn't mean for things to turn out like this, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper and nearly trembling. I remained silent, letting her stew in the awkwardness. Finally, she broke the silence. You're right. We've been awful to you. I've treated you horribly. I expected you to always take care of things, but now I realize how wrong I was. You don't owe us anything, Lucas. You never have. It was everything I had ever wanted to hear. But now, it offered no satisfaction. No, I replied firmly. I don't owe you anything. There was a pause. My mom then took a deep breath. We're sorry, she repeated. We never wanted to hurt you. On the other end, I could faintly hear her sobbing. But I didn't feel any pity. Not anymore. I had given them everything, and this was how they repaid me. I've already made my decision, I informed her. I'm done. And if you truly are sorry, you'll leave me alone. The line went quiet. Then, just as I was about to hang up, she whispered, Please, Lucas, don't leave us. Don't turn your back on your family. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. I already have turned my back on you. You just didn't notice until it was too late. And with that, I ended the call. I assumed that would be the end of it. However, a few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from my father. Lucas, you've crossed the line, he barked. You're not just cutting us off. You're ruining our family. You think this is over. It isn't. I am going to make sure you regret this. You'll be sorry. Just wait. I stared at the phone, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to listen to it repeatedly, savoring the anger in his voice. But I didn't. I deleted it. It wasn't worth my time anymore. But there was one call I needed. The call that would provide what I needed. Closure to this situation. But that call didn't come from my parents but from my brother. The first word that came from my brother's mouth made my heart shake. Lucas, you should be careful. This is bigger than you realize. They are plotting something. Something you wouldn't expect. I froze. Not sure of his exact words, but my brother's tone caused an ominous vibe to resonate within my gut. There was a surreal edge. And it seemed like he was concealing something. I reclined back on my chair as I tried to rationalize his words with everything that had happened. The constant calling, gaslighting, and accusations. What do you mean bigger than I think? I inquired. I tried to manage the swirling emotions within my thoughts. My brother paused before responding to me, which made me even more anxious. He said, Look, I know things have been bad between us. I understand that, but it's not just about the money anymore. It's all about control. They won't let this go. They'll make you pay for cutting them off. I could physically feel his words. What do you mean by that? What are their plans exactly? My mind began to run a marathon. However, I wasn't going to let dread consume me once again. I don't know everything, my brother promptly admitted. But I've witnessed how they've behaved behind closed doors. It's as if they're attempting to coerce the rest of the family into turning against you. I believe they are preparing something huge. And if you don't look out, they'll turn everyone against you. I rubbed my temples with the weight of his words crushing down on me. What was I getting myself into? Was this a last-ditch manipulation attempt, or was there more at play? I took a brief pause and replied, Thanks for the heads up, but I have already made a decision. They've crossed all the lines. I'm finished. With no other words being said, I hung up the phone. It wasn't simply about the money anymore. It was not a question of whether I had been generous enough. No, there was something deeper here, something toxic. I knew I needed to sever all ties before I ended up like them. Bitter, entitled, and suffocating in their own guilt. The storm struck the next day. I was sitting on the couch, perusing the contents on my phone when a message came through. It was a group message between my parents, sister, and brother. It was the last thing I would expect. We should talk. This family is disintegrating and we need you to fix it. This isn't all about money, Lucas. We are seeking your assistance. Please return home and be the man you were. I sat and stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the response button, but nothing. Instead, I pondered over the message. This was it. Their final attempt to persuade me back into the fold. But I wasn't going to fall for it. And with the promise that I would never cave in, I walked away, completely. I blocked their numbers from my phone and unfriended them from social media accounts. With no way of contacting me, I received the ultimate surprise a few days later, a visit to my apartment. To my surprise, there they were, my parents, looking like two broken individuals. Their faces were pale, their eyes were puffy and red. For a minute, they didn't look like the people who raised me. They looked like they had given up. A part of me wondered, have they changed their ways? Lucas, please listen to us, my mother barely whispered. We apologize, we were mistaken, and we don't want to lose you. The situation has escalated beyond our control. We just want our family back. There was no way I could say anything because I was taken aback. My father went on to say in a broken tone, please don't do this, son, we need you. You are the only one who can fix this. That was when I realized that I was done, completely. I have been the ultimate puppet for my parents and their life crises over the years. They used me as a net in times of financial need. Then, when things got better, they just discarded me and didn't treat me as a matter. But they were now at rock bottom and desperate enough to beg and try to twist my mind. But I didn't have anything. There was nothing left to give. There's no more money, no more favors, no more support. I had been their lifeline for far too long and now I was walking away. No, I said firmly. You have had enough chances. I gave you everything. So this is how you repay me? I looked down with a shaking head. I'm finished, was the only other phrase I said. Their faces seemed to crumble under the immense weight of their actions. It felt unreal but freeing as well. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't being consumed by their drama. But not before my father muttered, you will regret this. But, I didn't care. There was no guilt, no remorse. I had finally gained control of my life and there was no way I was throwing that away again. Several weeks passed and I didn't hear from them again. In fact, I haven't even heard from anyone else. My phone has been quiet. For the first time in ages, I finally feel happy, free even. But the final blow came in the form of an email. It came from my sister, who apologized and said that I deserved better. She said the family was breaking apart and if I didn't do anything, things would never be the same again. There was even the plea to reconsider what was done. I didn't even read the whole thing and just deleted the email. That sealed the end. My family and whatever remained of it was left for them to figure out. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I understood one thing. I will not be looking back. So now I pose this question to you. Should I have handled the situation differently by trying a different approach with my family, or did I make the right choice by cutting ties and prioritizing my own well-being and peace of mind because I was tired of enabling their behavior and being taken advantage of so often? And do you think that maintaining contact with family is always important, regardless of the harm they may cause, or is it more important to protect your own emotional and financial well-being even if it means cutting ties?